Gather close and listen well. The story I am about to tell you is not a ghost story, though it is haunted by one. It begins with Brian Randall Shaffer. Born in 1979, Brian had a brilliant mind, studying medicine at Ohio State University. He was a tall, handsome 27-year-old with his whole life ahead of him. He had a beautiful girlfriend, an upcoming trip to Miami, and golden promises. But promises can easily shatter in the dark. The date was Friday, March 31st, 2006. Exams were over, and spring break had begun. The evening held the desperate thrill of celebration. Earlier, he shared a steak dinner with his father, who noticed how utterly exhausted his son looked. His father felt an urge to tell Brian to just stay home, but kept quiet. If only he had spoken those fears aloud. Because Brian was about to step out into a bustling city night from which he would never return. He was about to walk right off the earth. The air was thick with the frenzied energy of students set loose. Brian met his friend Clint at a local pub. They ordered shots, washing away the heavy stress of medical exams. The city lights blurred into a neon haze as they began their bar crawl, drifting from one crowded room to another. It was a steady descent into the chaotic belly of the night. With every step, the music grew louder and the drinks kept coming. Brian seemed so joyous, just a young man without a single care. But the night hides its teeth until it is entirely too late. Just past midnight, they met up with Clint's friend, Meredith. The trio walked toward the arena district, laughing in the chilly spring air, completely blind to the terrifying truth. They were walking Brian right into a dark, waiting trap. Their final stop was a place called the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The name sounds harmless, almost foolish, but that night, it became a tomb. To enter the establishment, you could not simply walk off the street. You had to step onto a steep escalator and be carried up to the second floor of a massive complex. As Brian, Clint, and Meredith rode that moving staircase, a security camera perched directly above the entrance watched them ascend. It recorded their faces, capturing Brian's relaxed smile right at 1:15 in the morning. Remember that camera, my child, for it is the unblinking eye that makes this nightmare so deeply terrifying. The bar inside was cavernous, throbbing with deafening music and packed shoulder to shoulder. There was only one public way in and one way out. A locked box. Inside, the air was suffocatingly hot, heavy with the smell of spilled spirits and frantic youth. The saloon was a sea of writhing bodies. The music pounded so fiercely you could feel the floorboards trembling beneath your feet. In the midst of this sweaty, blinding chaos, Brian leaned in and told his friends he was going to say hello to the band playing that night. He turned, slipping away from their sight, dissolving completely into the dense, dark crowd. Clint and Meredith stayed behind, sipping their drinks, assuming he would wander back any moment. But the minutes began to stretch, bleeding slowly into the early morning hours. The crowd shifted and pulsed like a living, breathing beast. They scanned the shadowed faces through the strobe lights, but the beast had already swallowed him whole. The harsh glare of the overhead lights suddenly snapped on, shattering the illusion. It was 2 a.m, closing time. The music died away, replaced by bouncers herding drunken patrons toward the only exit. Clint and Meredith stood near the escalator, their eyes frantically darting across the thinning crowd. They checked the dimly lit bathrooms and peered into the empty corners of the massive, sticky room. Brian was nowhere to be found. Frustrated and exhausted, they dialed his number, but the calls went to voicemail. In the confusing haze of the early hour, They reasoned he had simply grown weary and walked back to his apartment without a word. They stepped onto the escalator and rode it down into the cold street, completely unaware they were leaving their friend behind. The morning sun crept over the city, but it brought no warmth, only a creeping, icy dread. Brian's beautiful girlfriend, Alexis, stood waiting amidst the bustling noise of the airport. Bags packed, tickets in hand for a romantic getaway to the bright beaches of Miami. She dialed his number, her heart fluttering with mild annoyance that quickly curdled into sheer panic. The line rang and rang, the hollow sound echoing into the dark, empty void of his voicemail. Brian loved her deeply. He would never simply abandon her here. He would never miss this flight. Frantic calls were made to Clint, to his family, to anyone who might have seen his face. The terrible realization descended upon them like a suffocating, heavy shroud. Brian was not sleeping off a heavy night. Brian was gone, and the terror had just begun. The police were summoned, stepping into a nightmare that would consume them for decades. They immediately demanded the security tapes from the ugly tuna saloon. Detectives sat in cold, dark rooms, their eyes glued to the glowing monitors, watching the bustling night rewind in silence. The footage played like a grainy, ghostly film. Hundreds of faces blurred past the unblinking lens positioned directly above the escalator. They watched Brian arrive at 1:15 a.m., his bright smile caught forever in the amber glow of the camera. Fast forward. The tape rolled through the chaotic early hours, building a dreadful, quiet anticipation. Then, the digital clock on the screen flashed 1:55 a.m. There he was. Brian stepped out of the bar, pausing near the escalator. He spoke briefly to two young women, a brief exchange in the shadows. The women turned away, their laughter fading down the stairs. Brian lingered for a fleeting second, his figure captured by the lens. But he did not step onto the descending escalator. Instead, he turned his back to the camera and walked slightly off-screen, moving back toward the dark doors of the bar. It was closing time. The bouncers were clearing the floors. Yet, detectives watched the tape with bated breath, their eyes burning from the harsh glare, waiting to see him walk back out. The clock ticked past 2 in the morning. The crowd emptied out, dropping one by one into the street below. The heavy doors were locked. The camera recorded every single soul who left the building that night. Every last one. Except for Brian. He walked back into that room and vanished without a trace. How does a grown man evaporate into thin air? The detectives tore the building apart, trying to answer this haunting question. The ugly tuna was a veritable fortress of a locked room. Aside from the main escalator, tightly guarded by the security camera, there was a service elevator. But it opened into a dark, dusty construction site. Police brought in tracking dogs, desperate to find his scent in the maze of scaffolding and raw concrete. The dogs found absolutely nothing. Even if Brian had wandered into the dangerous, unlit construction zone, he would have left footprints in the thick dust. It was completely undisturbed. There were no hidden doors, no secret tunnels, no back alley fire escapes that didn't trip an alarm. The building was a solid, inescapable trap. He was inside, and then he simply was not. The years stretched into decades, leaving a trail of shattered hearts in their wake. His poor father, haunted to his dying day, searched endlessly for the son who walked into the shadows. People whispered terrifying theories in the dark. Did he somehow slip away to start a new life, shedding his identity like an old skin? Or did something monstrous wait for him inside those walls? hiding his body where no one would ever look? Perhaps he wandered into the dark belly of the building, claimed forever by the concrete and steel. We may never truly know. The ugly tuna saloona is gone now, but the chilling ghost of that night remains. Brian Shaffer simply walked into a crowded room, turned his back to the camera's watchful eye, and stepped off the face of the earth into an eternal silence.